Welcome to the big story. Now, if you're just joining us, that was at the 70th anniversary of the Chabazinga ship celebrations in Namutumba district on Saturday, February the 11th, where the president did explain why he appointed the Chabazinga as ambassador, and that also drew some controversy. Now, with me this morning is the Justice Forum President, Asuman Basalirwa, who says he will be taking government to court. What you probably do not know is that Asuman Basalirwa was at that function, at the celebrations, and as soon as the president arrived, reading the mood of the celebration, he left. I'll begin there. Basalirwa, you were on Saturday attending the Chabazinga ship celebrations, anniversary celebrations.
Yes.
But as soon as the president arrived, you left. Why?
Well, I left because I didn't live in protest. I left because I had some other engagement. As a matter of fact, the JEMA, the former Deputy Secretary General of JEMA, Madame Betty Acheng, died. So when I was at that function, I received the news. So I had to go away to prepare for the burial. So that's the reason I left. So it had nothing to do with the protesting the arrival of the president or being uncomfortable listening to the president. So I don't want to be misunderstood that perhaps I left in protest. I have no problem, listening to the president or anybody, because by nature I am a free thinker and I believe in contestation of ideas.
It isn't the first time we've seen walkouts on the president at several public fora by opposition politicians.
Well, but I have already told you why I left. I had a situation beyond my
All right,
control.
let's turn to this appointment. Last month, the president appoints several people, amongst them the Chabazinga, your Chabazinga, as ambassador. He does not even move him out of the country, which probably would have been of your concern since he would be away from the kingdom. But he appoints him as an ambassador for special duties in his office. Where is the problem in that?
Well, first of all, we don't know the job description. We actually don't know what the Chabazinga will be doing. We are not even so sure whether he will be in or outside the country, because neither me nor you has actually looked at the instruments of appointment. So we think that there is still a lot of mystery surrounding this appointment, which needs to be clarified by both government and the kingdom. But the bigger principle that we are looking at is the constitutionality of this appointment. Mr. Museveni has so often a time been very clear on demarcation of roles and not interfering in the space of the other. He has, for example, said religious leaders should concentrate on their Luvimbi in churches and mosques. He has said traditional and cultural leaders should remain in matters of culture, customs and norms, and the politicians should be doing the politics. And I recall NTV running a story where the president was at a rally somewhere in Mukono, and the president was saying, I don't want, for example, the Kabaka to be engaged in political processes. So one of our fundamental concerns is that Mr. Museveni, who has been opposed to traditional and cultural leaders engaged in politics, is appointing our Chabazinga as an ambassador. And we are contending that that appointment in itself is unconstitutional. And if they go ahead with that process, we will be finding our way to the courts, so that courts give a clarification. If the courts say it is okay, we will move with it. But we certainly think that it is not okay and it should not have happened.
Let's backtrack a bit. On the same celebrations at the anniversary on Saturday, the president said he's the one who allowed the return of kingship and the kingdoms in this country. So he understands the law and was working within the law in the appointment of the Chabazinga. Let's discuss the issue you've raised. He has asked the traditional leaders and religious leaders to stick to their Luvimbi. In his appointment of the Chabazinga as an ambassador, couldn't this actually be the appointment of the Chabazinga, who is your Chabazinga, to represent a larger constituency? A larger constituency called Uganda, where he serves me from Western Uganda and others from Northern Uganda in executing duties in the president's office. I don't connect it to a political appointment where maybe he will appoint him as a minister of works or a minister for special duties in the Prime Minister's office. There's a difference between the two appointments, him as minister and him as ambassador. He serves a greater constituency.
Yes.
But also it's relatively not connected to politics.
I think that's where the debate is. But what does the law say? I want you to consider Article 246 of the Constitution. That has been cited. Even when I was speaking to NTV the other Saturday, I showed them the provision. Article 246, among other things, says, a traditional or cultural leader shall not engage in partisan politics. The institution of the Traditional and Cultural Leaders Act describes what partisan politics is. Actually, it's a very broad thing. Now, Article 246 equally says, a traditional or cultural leader shall not exercise executive, legislative, and administrative functions. I don't know of an ambassador who does not exercise administrative functions. I don't know of an ambassador who does not exercise executive functions. In fact, when you read Article 99 of the Constitution of Uganda, it says all executive authority is vested in the president. The president shall exercise such executive authority either directly or through subordinates. Now, some of these subordinates who exercise executive authority on behalf of the president are ambassadors. The entire concept of ambassadorship is politics. In fact, it is politics at another level. Ambassadors engage in political processes at functions abroad or even here. When you look at Article 123, for example, the president can designate an ambassador to sign a treaty on behalf of Uganda. That treaty could have political ramifications, it could have economic ramifications, it could have security ramifications. Ambassadors are speakers, they are representatives of the president. The president who has a political party, the president who heads a political party, and the president who has a political program. So there is no disconnect between an ambassador and a politician. And if you want to domesticate the argument, to bring it back home, you can look at the situation of an RDC. The way an RDC represents the president in a district is the way an ambassador represents the president in a foreign country. So, in our view, they are one and the same. An ambassador, for all intents and purposes, is a politician or does political processes. So this appointment is bringing our Kyabazinga into the political arena. And that is our concern. That is our biggest worry. That along the way, we are going to find our Kyabazinga definitely being taken to court. We will find government being taken to court. So we think this appointment was really done in bad faith, and there was no consideration of the law. But I am glad that most probably the Kyabazinga has listened to our voices. The fact that he did not appear before the Appointments Committee of Parliament, because the Constitution says ambassadors and heads of diplomatic missions are appointed by the President with the approval of Parliament.
And we're jumping the gun because we don't think the entire list of appointees was actually provided for vetting. So we never know. Next week, tomorrow, today,
yes,
another list could actually surface.
Now, you are right.
Yes.
You are right. But as of now, I want to believe that our Kyabazinga has listened to our cries. Our Kyabazinga has listened to our voices. And as far as I'm concerned, by not being on that list, our Kyabazinga has respectfully.
Aren't you being unfair?
No.
As a subject of the kingdom.
Has respectfully declined the appointment.
Aren't you being very unfair? By letting a gentleman who's actually highly qualified, who's gone to school, that can actually serve this country, not just the kingdom, to stay in the kingdom and only serve the people of Busoga. Isn't that being selfish as the people of Busoga?
We are not being selfish. Maurice, we really think that by our Kyabazinga going to the UK to acquire a master's was a very good thing. But why do we acquire education? We don't acquire education necessarily to look for jobs or to get jobs. I have studied here and abroad myself. But when I got my master's, I never came back here to look for a job, to ask for a job. When I acquired my master's, what I did was to use that knowledge to make my office, my law firm better. So the argument we are saying is that it is good for traditional and cultural leaders to study, to be highly qualified. But that knowledge and those skills should be used to transform their communities. Because your primary constituency is your kingdom. As a traditional leader,
yes,
your primary constituency is your kingdom. That is where your loyalty lies. And that is where we want you. And Maurice, we have another challenge in Busoga.
Yes.
You know that our Katukiro, the Prime Minister, is already a public servant, working with the National Planning Authority. And because of that assignment, he is not on ground. Now, you are also taking away our Chabazinga. These are the two flag bearers or torch bearers of the kingdom. So when you take them away from the kingdom, we are going to be orphaned. This is the time when we need our Chabazinga, when we need our Katikiro on ground to spur socio-economic development of the community.
That is where there is a contradiction. Because the reason or the reasoning around the appointment of the Chabazinga was that a group of traditional leaders in the kingdom had approached the president and said it had continuously become difficult to service and manage the personal welfare of the Chabazinga. That the kingdom did not have the resources to provide for his personal needs and welfare as king of the Busoga. And why? Because you and many other prominent Busoga, including the speaker, have failed to find means of supporting the king and financing his welfare.
Yes.
So they sought an appointment or from the president, who said, well, I'm told he wasn't surprised, but, you know, he was concerned. So this appointment was to answer their plea for a form of financing of his welfare. So this is this appointment provides more finances to the king to actually pay for the other things you and others have failed to pay for.
No, I think what should be very clear, it is unfortunate, if it is true, it is unfortunate that some leaders in the kingdom went to the president to ask for an occupational bailout, as I would call it. We have not failed to look after our kingdom as Basoga. We have not failed to look after our king. And anybody saying that, I think, is not being fair to us. I think what has happened in Busoga is that the leadership has not mobilized the Basoga to avail the necessary financial and human resources to move our kingdom. So that failure should not be a justification for approaching the president for an occupational bailout for our king. So if the kingdom in Bugem, if the leadership in the kingdom is failing to mobilize us, okay, then they should resign. And the king puts in place a leadership that has the necessary mobilizational resources, the necessary mobilizational capacities to raise the resources to run the kingdom. They are basics. I will tell you, when we were at Makerere, I was chairman of Basoga State at Makerere. You recall so well, because we were together with you in the university. Yes. You recall so well that our time, nobody, there is no cultural association that beat Basoga State in anything. How were we doing it? We would move to individual Basoga, both in the university and outside. If it is a cultural gala, we mobilize resources to bring xylophones, to bring drums and what. I have written a letter to the Katikiro of Busoga outlining some of the things we would be doing. Okay? I am glad that he replied that letter and said we should sit and engage. So I think there hasn't been mobilization. This country, this town, this city, this globe has so many Basoga who have resources and are willing to contribute. But they need to get the leadership. They need people to mobilize them, to give them hope and confidence that once they mobilize these resources, they will be put to good use. And I think that is the missing link. So, rather than running for an occupational bailout, we should be going back to the drawing board to ascertain what went wrong, what is not happening, and what we should do better. And I will tell you, Maurice, one of the things that has come out of this appointment is the unification of the Basoga. The Basoga have become so unified. There are now many platforms, by the way, that have begun self-initiatives to mobilize resources to begin supporting the kingdom. Because to some Basoga, it is a shock. They are only learning it as a shock that we have been having financial constraints, that our Chabazinga is handicapped, okay? And because of that revelation, many people have come out. The Basoganset National Initiative has come out. There is now an initiative of Chabazinga Busoga Development Fund from well-wishers in Busoga and outside Busoga. So when they got this information, they got concerned.
Yes.
They have galvanized their resources, and something is being done.
All right. Let me just take you back. After the appointment of the Chabazinga as ambassador, the Prime Minister did state that the kingdom was grateful to the president and that the king would take up the post. That was the Prime Minister, who,
yes,
of course, after that has gone offline because it's been hard to track the Prime Minister. But there's been mixed reactions. You say, you know, there's this unification and there's this getting together of the Basoga and rallying, you know, behind a good cause and against the appointment. But there's been mixed reactions. We've seen the district council, I think just last week, the district council passed a resolution thanking the president, the Jinja district council, thanking the president for the appointment. Doesn't that concern you, that there is a section of Basoga that are actually happy with this appointment and would not mind seeing the ambassador, their king, as ambassador?
Well, I'm not surprised because you see, that's human nature. Diversity of opinion is human. But Maurice, I will tell you, when I arrived in Namutumba,
yes,
your NTV people were very far from me, I think. When I arrived in Namutumba, because you see, I have been a sole voice in this matter. But when I gave an interview to NTV and it went viral, I received a lot of calls from all over the world. The Basoga in the UK, in the US, in South Africa, everywhere, in support. When I went to Namutumba, and people saw me, and I went to Namutumba for two reasons. One, I went to Namutumba to gauge the mood of the people. And two, I went to Namutumba to listen to the official version of the kingdom in as far as this appointment is concerned. But also three, I went to Namutumba to get people who would support my cause in going to court. Because I want about 1,000 affidavits from different districts of Busoga opposing this appointment. And when I reached and I arrived at the venue, there was a lot of excitement. Everybody was either openly telling me go ahead or whispering to me, those who fear reprisal, whispering to me that we are with you. So, if you were to carry out an opinion poll, and NTV can do it, in Busoga or even in Kampala, amongst the Basoga, I will tell you that the opinion is divided, that is true, but the majority prefer that our Chabazinga declines disappointment, okay? And they think that it is going to cause unnecessary friction. Because you see, this entire concept of Obwa Chabazinga wa Busoga is a cultural concept. And there are so many cultural attributes and values that must be protected and respected. So the majority of the Basoga think that it is unwise. I am not their spokesperson, but I can only speak to those I have interacted with, especially in Namutumba. When I was in Namutumba on Saturday, a cross-section of people that I engaged with, those who came to me, those who are, by the way, have contributed money for the court case, okay? Because already people have contributed money to me for the court case. Those who are coming to join the case, those who are ready to give the affidavits, they keep coming to my office. If you came to my office in Mengo, you are going to find groups of people, some of them coming from as far as Wujiri, as far as Kamuli. So, the majority of the Basoga that I have interacted with, even on our platforms, where some of them you belong, because you are Msoga by association. I am concerned too. You are Msoga by association. I was with you in school in Busoga. You belong to some of our platforms. You have seen the sentiments. You have seen the thinking of the people. So I think it's true. But you raise another good point, fundamental issue, that when the Katukiro said, first of all, it is good manners. It is actually within the Busoga culture to appreciate. So I think it was good for the Katukiro of Busoga to thank the president for the appointment. Okay? And by the way, even in Namutumba, when the Katukiro was speaking, he thanked the president, but generally, for appointing Basoga in 2 positions. Because you see that list of ambassadors has so many Basoga. Zake Chibedi, Kezara Baswale, Mubiru, and the others. Okay? So he thanked the president, which is okay, which is culture. When somebody does something good to you, you thank them. He was non-committal on the issue of our Chabazinga taking up the appointment. Even the Chabazinga himself in his speech, he didn't mention anything about that appointment. It is the president who, in his opinion, by the way, and I'm emphasizing his opinion, because you see, the president is not the law. The president has an opinion, okay? But his opinion may be right or wrong. That's why we have courts. So if the president thinks that this appointment was proper, we respect his opinion, but let the court decide.
All right. We must conclude this discussion, yes. Asuman. But let me just, raise something. The issue around the reflections of Jinja district and most of the, Busoga, areas are what many are saying a mirror of what's happening in the kingdom. We've seen the president now appoint, a DP chairperson who is the chairman, who was former chairman of Jinja, as ambassador, former mayor of Jinja as ambassador. We have seen a conversation around the president trying to, either give a handshake or give an appointment of the former district chairperson of Kamuri, Honorable Salamu Sumba, who won her case the other day. And he's been making some inroads. There's been several appointments, as you mentioned, for the ambassadors and several other, Basoga who are in prominent positions. Isn't that a reflection of who the president is? That he's tapping into an area that would normally be the bedrock of the opposition, wooing them into the NRM to actually destabilize the opposition, as he has said, that by 2021, the opposition will be finished.
Well, first of all, let me assure you, Maurice, and the viewers, that by 2021, the opposition will not be finished. In fact, if the president is not careful, it is NRM that will be finished by 2021. Because you see, it is easy to look at these favors being extended to people like the Kezalas and the others. But there are some of us who are committed to this struggle and who are prepared to sacrifice everything the way we have done to ensure that we get the Uganda we want. So I think that is the president's opinion. But we are also working to ensure that the NRM is finished, of course, constitutionally and legally. And that's why we are in this struggle. 2, the president has not done that to Busoga alone, okay? Or to DP or FDC or what? Because as we talk now, for example, UPC is in alliance with the NRM. I was about to say they are in an ally, as Seya would say, okay? Uganda Federal Alliance is in alliance with the NRM. So the president has been courting, people from the opposition. And maybe
he has made inroads in the DP.
Yes, he has made inroads in.
You had recently mention of Mbide somewhere.
Yes, somewhere. But what I can assure you,
appointed minister.
What I can assure you is those of us who are building our parties on ideological premises, it is going to be extremely difficult. The president can make inroads in DP, can make inroads in UPC. He will not do it in Jema. He will not.
Until loan fight.
Why? Why, Maurice?
Yes.
Because you see, for us, we are building an ideologically premised party. Where the recruitment and the engagements we are having in Jema is based on ideology, so that people know and understand why they belong to a party. Those who belong to Jema should know I belong to Jema because my conviction says so. Not because I should be in X, Y, and Z, simply because I will easily serve through parliament. If that were the cause, some of us will not be in Jima. You would go where you think you'll easily sail through. So I think the challenge we have as political parties is in recruitment and engagement with our members. Let us build ideology. When you build an ideology, it will be very difficult for Mr. Museveni and his colleagues to court our people. So, but you see, that people who have stayed in power for long and in autocratic systems and environment, that happens. It happened in Kenya when Moi was still the Alpha and Omega. In Zimbabwe, you know, people like Morgan Tsvangirai are no more, okay? These inroads keep going in. Even in Rwanda, you cannot talk about an opposition in Rwanda. So autocratic environments, autocratic systems breed such characteristics. People will give in. In fact, by the time we succeed in making this country better, we will be few. It even happened in South Africa. How many people did Mandela complete with the struggle? Along the way, others joined the apartheid regime. You know the story of Mangosuthu Buthelezi. The Mandelas were struggling to liberate South Africa. Buthelezi was in bed with the de Klerks. So it happens. It's not only happening in Uganda. But you see, at the end of it all, some of us will be there to speak for Uganda, to speak for Ugandans, and for Uganda to know that not everybody is compromisable and that not everybody will be courted. Those who are going, we wish them well. Okay?
Thank you.
I wish them well.
Thank you very much, Asuman. Asuman Basalirwa, the president of the Justice Forum, joining us this morning to help us understand this conversation around the traditional or cultural leadership versus state duty. Thank you very much. And that was The Big Story.